Our last storyteller of the evening, Jan Gilbert, she was born and raised in Charleston, South Carolina. She performs regularly here at Piano Fight as part of San Francisco's premier sketch group, Killing My Lobster. And tonight, her story is called A Musical Theater Nerd's Deus Ex Machina.
Hi. My name's Jan and I'm a musical theater nerd. Hi. Yeah, that's about how those meetings go. But I was a musical theater nerd before Glee and Hamilton made it cool. I've been doing theater for as long as I can remember. And as you can imagine, it did not make for wonderful middle school years. I was very much a dork, which I enjoyed, but not many other people really understood that. So I started taking theater classes in like first grade, second grade. My mom was just like, what after school program do you want to take? And I said, I want to do performance. I want to dress up. I want to do fun things and twirl. That's an important part. So 8th grade came around and I did not have a great time in middle school, like I said. I know. But Jan, you're so cool. How could people not like you, right? It's possible. So in the 8th grade, I was in therapy. Great. All of my sandbox therapy sessions were very, very creative. If you don't know, that's where you express your emotions by putting people in a sandbox where you feel they go and where you stand. And I was always on my own little corner, and everybody was elsewhere. It was great. So I remember just like even my friends making fun of me. I would sit on a porch with my friend going through the book, the lyric book from Phantom of the Opera from the CD set, because I didn't know that Andrew Lloyd Webber kind of sucks. And then, yeah, thank you. He's terrible. And then we'd get to school and that same friend would make fun of me in front of other people for liking that. So that was fun. So I started taking professional theater classes at a place called Charleston Stage Company, which is at the historic Dock Street Theater in Charleston, South Carolina. And in 8th grade, I took a class and I met this girl named Cara Bruce. Cara Bruce wore floral combat boots, so she was the coolest person I had ever met. And one day after class, she said to me, hey, I have this voice lesson, down the hallway. Why don't you just come with me? I think you'd really like my voice teacher. So she took me to this space called the vocal studio. And you open the door and it's just perfectly lit. It's this warm, friendly environment. And she introduced me to June Bonner, who ran the vocal studio. And I sat through her lesson, and it was incredible. And I immediately went home and I said, Mom, I want this. Like, you can make me do the dishes for years. I don't care. I want voice lessons with June Bonner. So at this point, I had really taken to theater as more of an escape. And it wasn't about creating an escape for the audience at that point. It was about creating an escape for myself, because it meant that I could be somebody else. I could be somebody who was confident. I could be somebody who didn't have to deal with the bullying and the physical and emotional abuse that I had in the 8th grade. It was really hard for me to find a place where I belonged, or felt like I belonged. And June Bonner created that space for me. Let me tell you a little bit about June. June made her operatic debut with the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra at age 16. She had a 14-year opera career, which included 5 years as lead mezzo-soprano at the Metropolitan Opera Studio, as well as tours through the US and Europe. She was pretty awesome. She played Carmen 8 to 10 times. It was her favorite role. She loved playing Carmen, and I could see why. For those of you who watch The Golden Girls, June and Blanche Devereaux, same person. Southern, sassy, confident, charming. You'd walk in the door and she'd go, "Hello, my darling." Just flash this beautiful, bright smile at you, and instantly you felt special. She had so many students from all walks of life, every student with their own thing. She really made everybody feel special. She had one student I remember for a while. My lesson was after his. He was a severely autistic child. And what comforted him the most was his comic books. So she kept a stack of his comic books in her studio so that the last 10 minutes of every lesson, he could read the comic books with her. So every time I'd come in and they'd be reading comic books together at the piano. And June gave me that place where I felt like I belonged. I'd go to school, a kid would push me down some stairs, and nobody really seemed to pay attention, and I'd be able to go once a week for 30 minutes to June's studio and feel like I was meant to be there. So being with June really gave me the confidence to reinvent myself the summer between 8th grade and high school. And through the years, she coached me through, my first high school breakup. Guy promised me ice cream, but took me out and dumped me instead. I know, right? What the hell? He was a loser. Through auditions where I was dealing with rejection, which is something actors really deal with a lot. We're pretty awesome about it. And I remember this one particular audition I had for the governor's school where I sang an aria and I was deemed to be too expressive. It's okay. So I looked at her she had classically trained me. She had trained me as a soprano. And I looked at her and I said, I feel like I could do well in opera. And she said to me, no. Honey, you don't go into opera because you think you'll do well. You go into opera because you have a hole in your heart that nothing but classical music can fill. And you have that, but it's for musical theater. So she showed me where my passion was. And the years went by, I had fights with my mother. All the time June was there, coaching me and helping me. And I started to plan my move out to California, and I started to think, what am I going to do without June? What's June going to do without me? And June started to get sick before I left. She had suffered for years with COPD. For those of you who don't know, that's a respiratory illness. And it was tied to years of smoking. In the 60s, they would sit in these dimly lit bars in Europe and in New York, and it was all very romantic, surrounded by a cloud of smoke. They didn't know. And she always had difficulty breathing. And I remember when I saw her in the hospital, I went in on that Sunday, and she had gone into the hospital and then gotten better and gone home. But I had seen her there, and she had these bed sores. They were like gashes, like people had taken bites out of her. And it was hard for me to see her in that vulnerable place because she had always been my source of power. But on a Sunday, after she had gone back into the hospital, I went to the gym and I ran 6 miles instead of 5. I was delaying. I didn't want to go. When I finally got to the hospital, I spent a few minutes outside of the ICU wondering what the protocol was. I wasn't family. And I went in And I asked for June, and the nurse said, yes, sure, go ahead. Go in, there are a bunch of people in there. And I went in, and it took me a moment to realize what had happened. June had passed away while I was in the hall, figuring out how to go in. And I looked at her, and you could tell she had really struggled for her last breath. And it took me another moment to realize that nobody knew that I didn't know she had already passed when I walked in the room. Sorry. So I held it together. I didn't want to upset anybody. And when I got to the bathroom downstairs, I collapsed on the floor in tears. My powerhouse was gone. Somebody who had meant so much to me for so long was gone from this planet. I had my friends come pick me up. I couldn't drive. And I went to her service, beautiful service, that her caretaker and her executor of state put together at the Dock Street Theater. And her urn with her ashes was on stage. And I knew that she was on stage, flourishing her fan, singing the habanera, and she was home. Thank you.